to spooky Southcoast.
Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
All right, good evening and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with science advisor Matt Moniz. The silent assassin Matt Costa is on his way in. He's going to be here, he says.
Give him time.
Yeah, he's working tonight, so he's on his way in, and that's kind of how it works now with his new schedule. Some weeks he's here to start, some weeks he's not, but that's okay because I'm learning, and then when I feel comfortable, you're going to learn, and then everybody's going to know, and pretty soon we're all expendable. Which is the goal here. The goal is to make sure that we can be replaced at any given time. So we are here to talk with you about the paranormal, as we are each and every Saturday night. And we've got a great show lined up for you tonight. Now, for those of you who normally go to SpookySouthCoast.com and watch the live chat room and all that kind of stuff, you're going to notice that things are a little bit different. We made some changes. And actually, Moniz, I don't have you in the new chat room per se. Everybody should still be in there just fine, but we do need to get you into the new version of the page, which I'll do during a break because I just automatically go to SpookySouthCoast.com/SpookyTV, which will be the address when all is said and done. But for right now, if you want to go to SpookySouthCoast.com, click on the live show menu, and that'll give you a little drop-down box, and that's where you can see Spooky TV, and you can get it in the new format. No difference. It's going to be the same thing no matter which page you're on, but if you want to see it in the cool new style, then that's the way that you got to go. We're still working on that. That's going to be a work in progress. It's going to take a while to get everything up and running the way that we want to, but so far, so good. I mean, I haven't done too much damage.
Not yet.
But there's still plenty of time. I see Costa pulling in right now, actually. So there's plenty of time for me to screw that up, but stay tuned because it's going to be fun. But that's going to be the new design of the website. Hopefully it's going to be a lot easier for you to get in and out of there and find what you're looking for. I think what's happened is over the years, we've developed so many different aspects of the show. We've developed so many different, buttons for things. The Hipcast button, the Stitcher button. We've got so much going on now that, this way here, we're hoping that we can streamline it all and present it to you in a way that you can actually get to where you're going with a couple of clicks. Because Chris Balzano, our content director, did a great job of building that website. And then almost immediately, as soon as he was done, we started piling more stuff onto him. Like, here, add this. Here, add this. We should have this. We need to have this. And I'm starting to get away from the idea of, we don't need to have everything laid out right there in front of people. People know how to find things. So that's the idea about this. It'll make it a cleaner experience and hopefully a more enjoyable one. Not that you haven't already been enjoying your time on SpookySouthCoast.com anyway, but hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for you. And Matt Costa is making his way in, so, you don't have to go over there. I'm going to turn this chair over to you. You can take it over. It's your seat. You've earned it. All right, hang on. There, how was that? That must sound really weird to people that are listening in stereo. All right, so we are going to be talking tonight about a variety of paranormal topics. We're going to bring back a little bit of news for you. There's been a lot of requests to have the news come back. And I think if we can get Matt ready, we'll go with the Week in Weird intro for it and everything, but we'll just give him a couple minutes to set up. One thing that I do want to say is I want to say a big hello to all my friends out in Los Angeles who I got to hang out with this past Monday night. Hi to LA Paranormal, hi to Scott Marcus, hi to Chris Fleming. There was a whole bunch of people out there that met up at the Golden Gopher while Jeff Belanger and I were out in LA, and it was great to meet all those people. I look forward to getting back out there and hopefully investigating some of the sites out there because I heard some stories about some of their locations. And it just sounds really good. And I'm not talking about just the paranormal stuff either. I'm talking about the taco places. I'm talking about, the In-N-Out Burger. We hardly scratched the surface of what there is out there to do. 25 hours in Los Angeles is not enough. Although for some people, that's more than enough. But 25 hours was not enough to get out there and do some investigating. I want to check out the Queen Mary. Linda Vista is actually getting torn down and turned into condominiums for old people. So a convalescent home, actually, I think. So there's not going to be a chance to get out there and investigate that in time, I don't think. But, who knows. So, but thank you to everybody out there for being so hospitable. And we will gladly return the favor if you are ever out on the East Coast, which, I'm sure some of them will be someday. We had a big talk about that. That was one of the discussions that we had about the difference between West Coast haunts and East Coast haunts, and about how ours have more age, but it seems like the West Coast stuff has more mystery around it. So it's I'm very interested in seeing, what happens when some of them come out here and investigate some of our sites as well. So I'm going to get some notes out of my bag because I didn't do that in all the setup. But Matt Moniz, while I'm doing that, I want to ask you, what did you think of the Super Bowl?
I really didn't, to honestly answer you. I'm sorry. I
know. That's why I threw it to you with that question. I knew where it would be going if that was the case.
Absolutely nowhere.
All right. So we're gonna talk about a variety of paranormal topics, as I said tonight. The phone lines are going to be open up all night long. 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. The numbers are on the all-new SpookySouthcoast.com. Hey, Costa, what'd you think of that website? Did you get a chance to see it?
I'm trying to bring it up now.
It's not going to work. That's probably my fault. It's probably something that I did wrong. Try. I'll write it down for you. But do we have Week in Weird music?
We do, in fact.
All right. If you want to fire that off, I'll fire off the stories right after.
More bad news.
Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
The Week in Weird. All right, so we're going to bring back the Week in Weird, but we're going to do it in a little bit different fashion. I think, in the previous incantation of the Week in Weird, we spent way too much time reading the stories themselves, and we didn't really give people our thoughts and our analysis on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a quick rundown of a couple of stories here, and let's really open it up for discussion. The first story, and I'm sure you've seen this video, Matt Moniz, and if you haven't seen the video, I would have liked to put it on the new SpookySouthcoast.com, but I haven't figured that part out yet. A woolly mammoth may already be wandering around the wilds of Siberia. A creature with all the characteristics of the long-extinct animal was filmed wading across a river in the remote Russian region that I'm not going to pronounce. The jaw-dropping footage appears to show an elephant-shaped animal with reddish-brown fur, which would match the color of the mammoth hair dug up from the permafrost in frozen Russia, and what appears to be a trunk dragging in the river. A Russian government engineer out in the remote area last summer for survey for a planned road filmed the animal. He's not been available for comment since the video went public. The evidence of the woolly mammoth living up to 150,000 years ago across northern North America and Eurasia, with the best preserved carcasses in Siberia. But the species had disappeared at the end of the 10,000 years ago, with an isolated population still living on the Siberian Wrangel Island until around 1700 BC. So, Matt Moniz, have you seen this woolly mammoth footage?
I've seen the footage of the bear carrying the salmon. Yes,
that's exactly what I saw. What I saw too. I don't know. I mean, it's nice to want to think that it's a woolly mammoth.
Well, there's issue with the video. Not so much the video itself. It's the person that brought it out. The person that made it more public has been known to have, let's say, put forward less than legitimate things before.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So that put it in question just to start with. Number two, there are other characteristics of mastodons and woolly mammoths that would stick out, like in particular tusks. There were no tusks
on this animal, and I don't think that poachers would have taken the tusks off a woolly mammoth, and we wouldn't have heard about it. The other issue that I have with it is the video seems especially blurry around the part that is supposed to be the trunk. So it's almost like that's intentional.
Well, I think what you have here is a case that somebody videotaped a bear carrying a fish across the stream, and somebody took it. Hey, that looks like this,
Yep.
and then made it into something it
That's
is.
all that it takes. But it would be nice if we could actually find a woolly mammoth.
Well, there's still plenty of woolly mammoths up in Siberia. They're just frozen.
Yeah. It'd be nice if we could find a living one.
They're actually working on. This is not, science fiction. They're actually bringing them back with genetics. They're going to be in vitro fertilization of an actual elephant with a woolly mammoth baby.
Well, that's good news for me, because do you know why I want the woolly mammoth to come back, right?
No, why?
To do the dishes. Like on the Flintstones. I just got to open up the kitchen window and he comes in and he washes all the dishes. So I can't imagine that was sanitary.
Yeah.
Moving on. A group of Chinese tourists filmed the stained glass window in Scotland, a stained glass window in Scotland church, without realizing that it featured Princess Diana from beyond the grave. The video appears to show a ghostly-looking image resembling Diana. The footage is currently being examined by researchers to ascertain if it is a genuine ghost capture. It might be a bizarre optical illusion, but then again, it could be a ghost, and it could possibly be Princess Di's. After all, the Princess of Wales' mother is believed to have spent a lot of time in Scotland, passing away there in 2004. The footage is being used in an upcoming TV series on paranormal mysteries. Have you seen this footage now?
Yes.
And what are your thoughts on that? Because to me, it does look like Princess Diana.
I think it's an optical illusion.
You think so?
I think it is.
See, what I want to know is, and this would have been really, really easy for them to follow this up with, is I'd like to see a photo of what the window looks like in a still photograph. Because I'm just wondering, it could possibly be a stained glass window with an image of Princess Diana in it. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
Well, from what I can remember seeing in the video, it's not defined enough to really tell.
Well, because the camera's moving up
Yeah,
and down.
that's what I'm saying.
If you could get a nice still shot, you'd be able to tell. But then again, it's a matter of, if you live in England, who's the sexiest ghost you could have? And I mean sexy in terms of, the attractiveness of the evidence. That'd be Princess Di, of course. You have a nation that's still grieving over her loss, 12 years later. So...
But she died in France. Not to say that ghosts don't return to other, spirits.
Yeah, I don't think that has as much to do with it. I mean, and I'm talking from the need of the people to have a connection with her.
Right.
So, if the stained glass window kind of looks like her, well, then there you go. The same thing happens here with the stained glass window in the Millicent Library.
Right.
They have William Shakespeare in there. They have Millicent depicted as an angel. So there's all these things, that people will see, and everybody sees something different in it. I mean, I have to see that still photograph before I can say anything for sure. And it can't be that hard to get a picture of it, can it?
You should be able to find another picture of it.
Of course, then again, you get these news stories in the Sun. They're not going to bother to actually go and get the actual facts out there. So there you go. That's the Week in Weird for this week. And if you have any stories that you want to submit to the Week in Weird, just email them, spookykrew@spookysouthcoast.com, and we'll read them on the air, because we're bringing this thing back. It will not die, as much as we try to. All right, so let's move on. From there, tonight we're going to have a pretty interesting show. There's been a lot of talk in the news lately about ghosts. And it's not the usual news stories of such and such paranormal group actually believes that ghosts exist, and they want to prove it to you in the town hall. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The general, filling up the last few minutes of a 11 p.m. newscast, or the back page of a newspaper type stories, or in some ways, the promotion of a community event, things of that nature. But
the fluff and fill pieces.
Yeah, well, I don't want to give away the industry terms for, but one of the things that's been up in the news a lot lately is the idea of ghosts being bad in some way. Some ways being blamed for things, and in other ways, causing people grief in their regular life. So tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about both sides of that coin. The people who try to use the ghosts as scapegoats for their criminal activity, which was in the news lately, and also just what it's like to be a paranormal enthusiast, not even just a paranormal investigator, but just somebody who's into the paranormal, and what kind of impact that has on your regular life. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening who, and Matt Moniz is actually manning the chat room tonight. He's going to be taking over as director of the Spooky TV. So he's manning the chat room tonight, so he can kind of look in there for any questions that pop up during the course of the show as well. And, of course, I'll check the emails, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. If anybody's had these incidents where people know that they're into the paranormal and it's had some sort of negative impact on their life, whether it be just getting the stink eye from a relative, whether it be getting harassed by a coworker, it's happened to all of us. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And our content director, Chris Balzano, is going to join us as well to kick the topic around coming up. And then later on in the show, we've got some news here that might be a little... It's enough to make Steve Gonsalves cry. I mean, it is, because he did. There's a lot of speculation about last week's episode of Ghost Hunters. You know, they do that little teaser for the next week's episode. And since that episode aired, there's been a lot of speculation about what this big scene means, where all the investigators are crowded around a table, and Jason and Grant have an announcement to make, and it supposedly will change the face of TAPS forever. So we're going to talk about what we think that might be, and we'll talk about what the implications will be from that, if it turns out to be true. And that's big-time stuff, you know what I mean? Like, that show has been consistent, more or less. I mean, they've changed some investigators around, but, you know, if something is going to change the face of TAPS, change the face of Ghost Hunters, it's got to be big. Do I want to get... I mean, you know what? I'm going to give away what I think it is right now.
Okay.
I think they're going to stop looking for ghosts.
Okay.
Yep, no more ghost hunting. They're still going to call it Ghost Hunters, but they're just going to do a cooking show instead. All right. Why don't we take a break? When we come back on the other side, we'll bring in our content director, Chris Balzano, and we're going to have some fun tonight with this topic. And remember, you can call in at any time, 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. And, of course, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. You can use the contact form right on the brand new website. So we'll be right back with more here on Spooky South Coast.
All the action from the Stanley Cup champions right here on AM 1420 WBSM. Whether the Bees are on the ice at TD Garden or on the road, you won't miss a play. Bruins Hockey, presented by Pilgrim Bank, Ralph's Auto Center, Sunrise Bakery and Coffee Shops, Advanced Financial Planners, and by the Worley Bids Factory Outlet. Your home for the Boston Bruins is right here on AM 1420 WBSM. AM 1420 WBSM thinks our hardworking teachers should get the recognition they deserve. Most go above and beyond to see that area students receive the best possible education. We ask your help in paying tribute to those outstanding area teachers. Log on to WBSM.com and nominate a WBSM Bank 5 Teacher of the Month. Tell us why one teacher deserves this honor. Each month, we visit a classroom and present the award. The class wins a Domino's pizza party and tickets to Ocean's 18 Blacklight Mini Golf. And the teacher gets a special plaque from Dartmouth Gifts and Engraving, flowers from Treeland Nursery, a delicious cake from Cold Stone Creamery in Dartmouth, a gift card to A&E Jewelers, dinner compliments of Advanced Eye Centers, and a gift card to the Ruby Room. The Teacher of the Month with Bank 5 and AM 1420 WBSM.
This is Jack Peterson with the latest featured animals up for adoption at the Forever Paws Animal Shelter at 300 Linwood Street in Fall River. Aslan and Precious are two canine buddies up for adoption. Aslan is a 2-year-old tiger striped brindle American Stratfordshire Terrier who'd make a great companion. He's gentle, friendly, playful, and loves the comfort of a cozy couch. Precious is a black and white 3-year-old large hound mix that's been at the shelter for a year. She's an awesome dog who's still waiting for that special person to take her home. She's friendly, playful, has lots of energy, and full of personality. Aslan and Precious can be seen daily in a play yard together at the Forever Paws shelter, enjoying a tug-of-war game with their favorite toys. They both get along well with other animals and would be a wonderful addition to any family. Visit them at the shelter. For more information, call the shelter at 508-677-9154 or visit their website, foreverpause.com. Both pictures can be viewed on this site.
Winter in New England can be absolutely beautiful, with many fun things to do, but there are those days when Old Man Winter makes it a challenge. That's where the WBSM Storm Center goes to work for you. We'll let you know what to expect and what's closed, canceled, or delayed when bad weather strikes. With the help of AccuWeather, Pete Braley and Neil White provide all the winter weather information you need. Storm Center, sponsored by ABC Disposal, by Fall River Ford, and by A&A Jewelers on AM 1420 WBSM.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
In the woods, just outside of town.
Oh, not surprising. You've got your home. Bears have theirs.
Yeah, but see, this wasn't just any bear. This bear was wearing jeans and a hat, as in a Smokey Bear.
Jeans and a hat. That's definitely Smokey. What exactly did he have to say?
Well, we were about to head home, after having a bonfire.
Oh, I can guess where this is going.
Right. See, Smokey told me the fire wasn't actually out. He said if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
That's true. Did you know that 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans? That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Wow, no kidding?
I'm a forest ranger. We never kid.
Sorry.
that was a joke.
Oh.
If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference, because 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Everybody, let's go. Ho! Welcome everyone to West High School Spring Fling. Hey, where we at?
Alright, I've gone through all the tracks, just move through the beats. Do your thing.
All right, everyone, let's hear it for West High's own Brooke Turner, a.k.a. DJ Hook.
Scratching at my first school dance takes confidence. So getting into college, I've got what it takes. Okay, I went through the practice sessions, I slept good, I feel good.
We will now begin the test. Please take out your pencils.
I got this.
We're all good at something. Maybe it's breakdancing or skateboarding or video games. Whatever you're good at, you had the skills to make it happen. And those same skills will help us get to college. Visit knowhowtogo.org to learn what you should be doing right now to prepare for college. Start taking the steps at knowhowtogo.org.
I've got what it takes. So do you.
Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation, and the Ad Council.
Captain Eric Lawrence was training Afghan soldiers when his truck was hit by an IED.
I sat home alone for months. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to go back to work. PVA helped me write my resume, got me a job interview. I got the job.
Paralyzed Veterans of America, changing lives, building futures. To learn more, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
The MIH Radio Hour, where they make it happen. What's happening around town with the arts, music, and social media? MIH Radio with hosts Jeremiah and Franchise. On the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, the MIH Radio Hour is brought to you by Advanced Eye Centers. Advanced Eye Centers, focused on your results. The MIH Radio Hour. Hear it on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m. It's on AM 1420 WBSM.
This is the story of Daniel, who was born 2 months early. His lungs weren't ready. His heart wasn't ready. His parents could only hope that one day he would leave the hospital healthy, and they would all live happily ever after. Daniel's is just one of the more than 500,000 stories of babies born prematurely last year. You can help the March of Dimes stop premature birth and bring more babies home healthy. Learn how at marchofdimes.com. Working together for stronger, healthier babies.
Major League Baseball players are getting in on the action.
Hi, I'm Michael Young.
I'm Chris Young.
I'm Carlos Pena. And we're getting in on the action. Thousands of high school students across the country are getting in on the action by volunteering in their communities.
Action teams of high school students are joining Volunteers of America and Major League Baseball players to help train and inspire the next generation of volunteers.
It's easy to start an action team at your school, so you too can get in on the action. Are you in?
Log on to actionteam.org. Are you in?
Turn on all your lights, lock the doors, and pull down the shades. Spooky South Coast is back.
All right, welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz. The gang is all here because we have content director Christopher Balzano joining us on the line. Before we start that discussion, though, I just want to let everybody know, in that new SpookySouthCoast.com, I should point out a few things. The shop now contains our real Spooky South Coast t-shirts, like the ones that we wear, the ones that the Spooky crew wear, and the ones that are available for sale at all our events. Those are now up for sale on the website, so you can go there and purchase them for yourself. I have not, I'll admit, I have not put in the quantity for the sizes and everything. We do have most of it in stock for the different sizes, but for some reason, if you order it and we don't have the size, I'll let you know. But I hope to get a count of the stock and get it all up there in the next few days. It's been a busy week.
It's okay.
And one other thing I want to point out on there as well is, now I forgot what I was going to say about it.
What, the shirts?
No, about the SpookySouthCoast.com site. Well, of course, it is a work in progress, so is my mind remembering what it is that I want to say about it.
Well, you did a good job. The past few days you put into it, the effort really shows.
Yeah, thanks, but it's stuff that I should have been doing a long time ago. A long time ago, I should have been helping with the website. Instead of saying to Matt Costa, to Chris Balzano, to Tim Bernal, to everybody, to Pat Court, and saying, hey, do this, do this, do that, do this, do that. Now I feel like this time it's time for everybody else to yell at me and tell me what to do. And if I know how to do it, I'll try. But really, come on. I've made everybody else do all that work for all these years. Moniz is just looking at me with his guilty face of, so have I. That's all right, though. All right, well, we're going to get into this discussion tonight. And I want to start this off by talking about, we mentioned the idea of ghosts being blamed for criminal activity. And this is actually nothing new. This is something that's been happening, for quite a few years now. There we go. This is something that's been going on for quite a few years. And we've heard cases of, people being on the stand and blaming the devil for murders. People saying that they were under the influence of a demonic presence when they did something wrong. And now we have this new story, which is actually, it's a couple weeks old, but it's something that I had only recently heard about. A Wisconsin man arrested on domestic abuse charges told police that a ghost punched his wife, authorities said. Police responded to the disturbance call at approximately 8 p.m. Sunday. Again, this is a couple weeks old. According to a Fond du Lac County Sheriff's report obtained by the Smoking Gun. At the scene, they found 41-year-old Michael West and his wife, who told cops that her husband twice attempted to strangle her and struck her in the face when she attempted to contact 911. West told authorities that his wife sustained injuries as a result of several falls, the Northwestern reports. When an officer pressed the issue, West allegedly changed his alibi, opting instead for a supernatural cause. A ghost did it. West is charged with domestic abuse, strangulation, battery, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. He remains in custody in lieu of $1,000 bail. Chris Balzano, content director for Spooky South Coast. I got to ask you, are you convinced? Is that a good enough defense for you?
It is. I think the unfortunate thing was about 300 years ago, 400 years ago, they ruled that spectral evidence is not allowed in courts in Massachusetts, and so precedent that they try to bring in says that unfortunately the ghost will not be able to go into court and give his side of the story.
Well, don't forget too, it was in Tennessee where the Bell Witch case happened, where they actually did, find a ghost at fault. So.
Well, there's also the report of the woman that was supposedly burnt, and her ghost came back, and found out that it was actually her son that stabbed her. They exhumed her body and they found that, yeah, she was stabbed. So there has been evidence that has been admitted after 300 years ago, but it's rare.
And how much of a defense is it really? I mean, what I want to know is why he thought that would work.
Well, I guess if you're hitting your wife in the first place, something isn't quite right up there. So
that's true.
And of course, in so many of these cases, the people honestly believe it. It's hard to tell whether this guy is genuine or not, but many times the influence, and last week you guys had a great show on the influence of the paranormal on people and things like that. I mean, it is one of those things where someone doesn't even need to be fully out of their minds to go for that. If they're influenced heavily enough, they do something that is outside of their body. Couple that with other experiences they've had, and all of a sudden, you start to believe that there might be other forces.
And that's really the point of this is, do we blame the fact that we've become so used to the idea of the paranormal in pop culture that now we can kind of lean on it as an excuse like that? I mean, I'm just going to guess that these people must watch some of these reality television programs to have ghosts in the forefront of their mind, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of part of what you guys were talking about last week is has it jumped so much into pop culture that you don't even necessarily need to be a fan of the ghost shows to be influenced by what ghosts say. I mean, I know that people I work with, for instance, when they find out what I do, they don't watch the shows, but they know enough of the shows and enough of the pop culture that they come up and, whether it's they call me, oh, hey, you a Ghostbuster, where's your proton pack? It's like, hey, dude, that movie's really old now. How can you be still referring to that, other than the fact it's great? Or even just other things like, people who don't watch the shows ask me if I can help them with their plumbing. And I'm like, I don't do either of those things, actually, so I'm sorry about that. But, so it doesn't even need to actually be on the forefront of their mind to be part of the background. I mean, if you take something which is, I would say, paranormal related, something like curses. People believe heavily in curses, whether it's professional athletes like Tom Gordon has written about, or whether it's just your everyday thing. I remember I had two different psychics tell me that an ex-girlfriend of mine had cursed me, and they said it in a very similar way to the point that, for years this influenced my relationship with people, because I honestly felt that this specific curse that the girl had on me was impacting like my personal relationships with people. P.S. She was actually from the Bridgewater Triangle too, so there you go.
No, that probably explains it all right there.
Right, and so I think if you take the power and the influence of that and you just put on a different face, and that's these ghosts, I think it's a flip that some people who are searching for answers that they just can't quite get in the normal world are going to all of a sudden start to say, maybe there is other stuff that influences me.
I mean, then again, we are, not to discount the possibility that ghosts are causing some of these incidents, but I mean, this is just one of those cases where it's somebody trying to get away with something and hoping that if his defense is just crazy enough, you know what I mean?
Right.
Somebody might not want to push it a little bit further. But there are, more severe cases in this. I mean, as bad as it is to have a husband and wife get into a physical confrontation like this has actually reached the point where there's been murders that the defendant and the defense attorney in turn have tried to blame on paranormal causes. And I just don't imagine that even if you are under the influence of a demon, and it's possible, it happens, but that's not going to be that's not going to be enough to defend you, because it's just not provable.
One of the most bizarre cases, and like you were saying, this is nothing new, and we can talk about how the different cultures from across the world view this, because I see this daily going through the news for Ghost Village, is that it's completely based on the culture that you live in, and it's so much more accepted. One of the cases that I remember was, I believe, in Sweden, where a man had killed his girlfriend, and his defense was this is crazy. This is like kind of mixes all these things that are in the news today. This was only about 2 years ago. Someone had horribly influenced someone else. Kind of like the cases we had of like hazing, and not hazing, but teasing and bullying over the internet and Facebook and things like that, and could the people be held responsible for it? But anyway, this person had caused the suicide of a girl in a loft somewhere in Sweden, and this gentleman moved in to the loft, and he ended up killing his girlfriend. And his defense was the ghost of the suicide victim was coming back to him and encouraging him to get rid of the girlfriend. And he had become so haunted and so tortured by this person that he finally gave into it. And the defense attorney was looking to bring up the person who had bullied the person who caused him to commit suicide, and that was the defense, that person was responsible. Case never came out. You know, there was never anything else that came out of it. I think they dropped that defense, but the initial defense was this is the person who we should be looking at. So there's like a paranormal reason, like two things removed, and yet still the person was saying, you know, he didn't do it in his right mind. This ghost was torturing him, and we need to go after the person that caused the ghost. So it's a little bit crazy.
Well, one of the things that I've heard about in relation to ghosts and the law is it's popped up on this show a couple of times. Excuse me. Especially when speaking to psychics and spirit mediums and people who feel like they can listen to the voices of those who have passed on. There's some degree of hope that through both mediumship and through the ability to communicate with spirits, with EVP and other devices, that maybe someday we can actually use the testimony of spirits in a court case. And we know that there are cases that's happened, as Moniz was talking about before. But the talk that maybe the technology could progress to the point where, you know, you could be called as a witness to your own murder.
Right, and that to me would be, you know, if I had, you know, the ability to, I would be a card-carrying member of the ACLU. That seems absolutely ridiculous to me, because there are so many different levels of motivation and technology, and all that stuff seems really freaky to me. Because if I had a grudge against you, I could just easily say it was you who had killed me. And you know, we don't necessarily know that people are any more truthful, and not to mention the fact, how do you really hold someone accountable for what they say after they've died?
And not only that, but how can you be sure that it's the spirit of that person that was murdered that you're speaking to? Right.
So that seems like a whole bunch of not being able to really face your accuser kind of thing. Because then, what are you going to say? How are you going to, if that person, you know, if that person has been dead for a few years, or the witness that they're calling, because you got to follow the slippery slope. So then maybe a ghost that was there viewed it, and they could be called. There's no way to test the reliability of not only who that is, but what that person says. So that to me seems like a really, we don't have enough problems with the law. We got to start bringing like spectral evidence back. That's just really insane to me. But they do talk about, and my favorite is when people make the yearly predictions, and that's one of the predictions. Like, really, you think like in the next 365 days we're going to reach that point? Right. How about in the next 365 days we just get people to admit that yes, you can communicate with spirits, let alone use them as a witness in a trial. But you know, that's what's interesting about talking about this kind of thing, about the idea of ghosts being blamed for something, is at least it means that the people, hopefully the people who are making the accusations, believe strongly enough in the existence of ghosts that it's somewhat plausible. I mean, obviously this guy here, this Michael West, you know, he's just trying to get out of trouble. But there's plenty of incidents where it's not a criminal act, but it's being blamed on a spirit. There's plenty of instances where things happen and spirits either rightly or wrongly get the credit. You know, rightly or wrongly, like they were right to do what they did, or the spirit was wrong to do what they did. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of the numerous reports we've heard of people who are able to avoid burning in a fire because some sort of spirit gave them, you know, warning before the smoke detector went off, or because they didn't have batteries in the smoke detector, a ghost woke them up in the middle of the night. You know, there's enough of that interaction between them that they can be both the one to receive the blame and the one to receive the praise. And it's funny because I'm thinking of the exact opposite. I'm thinking of Robert the Doll,
Mm-hmm.
and the catchphrase, Robert did it. And I'm thinking about how, my sisters, especially growing up, always used to blame things on their imaginary friends. So it was very rare that the ghost got the credit for anything, but there were definitely like small instances throughout my life where, these people that I couldn't see kept stealing things from me. So when I told, I never got any justice.
Well, Robert's a good friend of yours.
Oh yeah, Robert's a bud of mine now. So
yeah. So maybe you could start blaming him for things. I'm sure he'd love that.
Yeah, it doesn't really fly in my house. The buck stops with me. So
I still have Claire in my house too because Jill's coming up for the Dead of Winter event. So I told her I'd give her back to her then. So she's still in my house, and whenever anything goes haywire, people will be like, "Is it that doll? Is the doll finally acting up?" But no, it's usually.
It's a shame we couldn't get those two kids together.
I know, huh? Imagine the haunted doll babies they could have together. That Robert's he's a one hideous doll.
It is a creepy doll.
Yeah, that's right. I don't care if he hears me either. So, do you think when the book comes out, Chris, we can get Robert to come on the show and talk about it?
I'm actually going to give him a copy. So
there you go.
We'll see what happens. We'll let him read through it.
There you go.
Night.
That book, of course, would be Haunted Objects, Stories of Ghosts on Your Shelf by Christopher Balzano and Tim Weisberg, coming to bookshelves July 2nd.
July 2nd, I believe.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh,
it takes
the
a long time
anniversary of Roswell.
Also, I think that was also the anniversary of the last time that we handed them in the book. 1 year later is when it's going to come out. All right, well, we're coming up on a break. When we come back in the second hour, I want to talk about this idea of if the paranormal can have a negative effect in your life, and by that I mean, can it ostracize you in some way? And there's a great story that Chris put up on ghostvillage.com about some people that had that happen to them. So we'll talk about that story and more, and we want to hear from you, especially, you don't even have to be a paranormal investigator. And I know that investigators out there have had this happen where word has gotten out at work, or the neighbors' children have found out that that's what you do, and the neighbors don't want the kids to go over there and play anymore. I know these instances have happened to people, so we want to hear about them. But at the same time, too, even if you're not an investigator and you're just somebody that's interested in the paranormal, maybe you've been hanging around the water cooler and you've tried to have a conversation with a coworker, saying something like, "Oh, did you happen to see Ghost Hunters last night? Really? You watch those shows? What's wrong with you?" I'm sure that those conversations have happened to people out there, and I want to hear about them. I want to talk about them. I want to find out, maybe, just maybe, I'm wrong. And maybe people aren't looking at you funny. But I know I tend to get those funny looks still. And let's face it, it's one thing to say, I'm really into ghosts and stuff, I watch a lot of paranormal shows, as opposed to saying, well, I host a radio show where I talk about the paranormal. I mean, you kind of imply that hosting a radio show is kind of a pretty cool job. You know what I mean? So you kind of hope that having that cachet in front of what you're about to say is enough to make people say, "Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not really into that stuff, but yeah, no, cool." But that's not the case. They're like, really? They let you talk about that on the radio?
So, I'm not going to say a word.
Oh, nobody's been stigmatized more from this than you have, I'm sure. Yeah. So we're going to talk about all that coming up in the second hour, and I think Matt Cost is actually making changes to the website as we go. Were you able to log in?
I was. Yep.
Really? Yeah. So it must have been your computer, Chris.
Yeah, I have a habit of doing that. I'm trying to figure out if it's because of my account that I have on, but we'll see. We'll work on it.
Robert did it.
Robert. Maybe it's best to have me hands off on the website for a bit.
No, not at all. No. There's so much stuff that I don't know how to do. But excuse me. So the changes are happening on the fly on SpookySouthcoast.com. So check it out. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about. There is some space on there where we could actually, offer up some advertising packages for people if they're interested. So just email us, spookycrew@SpookySouthcoast.com, if you want to buy some ad space on the show. And we're going to be hopefully bringing some new sponsors onto the program. We've got some interested parties that are great businesses that I'm a big supporter of, that hopefully they get involved and they advertise here on the airwaves so that we can tell you about them each and every week. So we'll do all that in the future. But coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about how ghosts have made your life a living hell. Matt Costa, I know, do you ever get anybody ever say anything about you coming in and working on the show?
No, Not usually.
That's because you don't tell anybody.
Uh-huh.
That's why. All right, we're going to talk about all that coming up in the second hour. Coming up after the news, we also want to remind you there's still tickets available for our Legend Trips event, Graveyard Shift at Slater Mill, coming up on April 21st. If you go to SpookySouthCoast.com, you'll see the Legend Trips logo pop up on the slider, and you'll also see it under the Spooky South Coast shop under events. That'll get you to the Legend Trips website, or you can just go to legendtrips.com. Either way, and you can purchase those tickets, $99 for a full night of dinner, lectures, and investigation, and one of the most haunted mills in America. And it's going to be a great, great time. They always are great events. And, of course, you can also get a discounted rate at a hotel room at the Comfort Inn of Pawtucket if you go and buy a ticket from Legend Trips and you use the code that's on that page. So, and it's a good deal because it's not just the night of the event, but you can get the night before, the night after at that reduced rate too. So, I don't know. I might just go on a little mini vacation for this. All right, we'll be right back with more coming up in just a few minutes here on Spooky South Coast.
First with local news, talk, and sports. This is WBSM New Bedford, AM 1420. WBSM, a Cumulus station.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. At the height of her career, she was called the Queen of Pop. Then fans watched as her personal life unraveled. Now singer Whitney Houston is dead. More from ABC's Aaron Katursky.
Her voice was powerful. Her music best-selling. Her influence far-reaching from Christina Aguilera to Mariah Carey. On the eve of the Grammy Awards, Whitney Houston was pronounced dead in the Beverly Hilton Hotel, according to Beverly Hills Police Lieutenant Mark Rosen.
There were no obvious signs of any criminal intent.
Houston struggled with drugs. She admitted to ABC's Diane Sawyer to abusing cocaine, marijuana, pills, and alcohol.
At times.
Whitney Houston was 48. Aaron Katursky, ABC News.
ABC's Alex Stone is outside the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
Outside the hotel here, a Beverly Hills Police Crime Lab van is parked in the valet area, and several police patrol cars are there as well. Police are confirming she was pronounced dead around 4 o'clock local time here at the hotel. She was set to attend the Clive Davis party, where she had been a regular in recent years.
Davis says there will be a tribute to Houston at tomorrow night's Grammy Awards. Republican voters in Maine have made their choice.
I'm now going to announce the winner of the Maine GOP presidential poll. And that winner is Mitt Romney.
The state's GOP chairman, Charlie Weber, announcing the results of the state's week-long caucuses, which ended today. Ron Paul finished a close second place. Hundreds attended a funeral today in Tacoma, Washington for 7-year-old Charlie Powell and his 5-year-old brother Braden.
We know that they're with their mother.
Their grandfather also at the ceremony. The boys were killed when their father set their home on fire last Sunday. You're listening to ABC News.
When you were a kid, you had all sorts of toys. Toy cars, boats, trucks, entire toy boxes full of fun. Of course, you never really outgrow your toys, do you? It's just that now, instead of a box full, you have a garage full. Cars, trucks, boats, motorcycles, ATVs, and more. As you get older, your love of toys just gets stronger. So protect those toys the best way possible by switching to Allstate. An Allstate agent can help do the switching, paperwork, bundle all your policies together, and even find you a bunch of discounts. So if you love your toys, make sure you protect your toys by making one call to an Allstate agent.
Protect all your toys with Allstate. Find an agent near you at allstate.com today. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Property and Casualty Insurance Company and Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and their affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Dollar for dollar, nobody protects you like Allstate.
It's been a longer than expected trip for passengers on an American Airlines flight from Miami to Detroit. Their plane made an emergency landing last night in Kentucky after the pilot received an indication of a possible hydraulic problem. The 142 passengers and crew had to stay in Louisville overnight and completed the trip this morning. An Indianapolis woman and her 7-year-old son have been reunited after the mom's car was towed with the child inside.
Imagine making this call to 911.
My car is gone and my son is in the car.
Robin Hardy parked in a tow zone at a dollar store in Indianapolis long enough to get towed with her 7-year-old boy inside. The tow truck driver made it back to his lot before realizing and calling authorities.
My boss just advised me to please, put the child in the cab and return the vehicle and the child back to where we picked it up, which was at the Eagledale Plaza.
Okay, is that where they're headed back to now?
Yes, ma'am, because I sure didn't want the mothers. Oh my God, where's my child?
Both the tow truck driver and the mom were arrested. Richard Cantu, ABC News.
An organizer of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington says making changes to the monument will threaten its design. Harry Johnson says he's disappointed the King family and Interior Secretary Ken Salazar have decided to remove a partial quotation and to replace it with a full one. Critics had complained that the abbreviated quote didn't accurately reflect King's words. This is ABC News.
Mortgages should be illegal because you're getting robbed every month. With a typical $200,000 30-year mortgage, you'll end up paying over $400,000 after interest. Hi, I'm John Commuta, creator of the Transforming Debt into Wealth system. My proven system can eliminate your mortgage and all your debts. Let me send you a powerful free CD. For your free CD, call 1-800-618-4001. 1-800-618-4001. 1-800-618-4001.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Can you tell if this burger contains bacteria that could cause kidney failure? Listen. Can't. You can't see it either. There's only one way to tell if you cook meat and poultry to a bacteria-killing temperature. Use a food thermometer. It's not an extra step or a nice to have. Raw or undercooked meat may contain bacteria that can make you very sick, or worse. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year, and roughly 3,000 will die. But you can keep your family safer by using a food thermometer every time. Learn more about this and other important information. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov. That's foodsafety.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
The Boston Bruins are going strong, and you can hear all the action from the Stanley Cup champions right here on AM 1420 WBSM. Whether the Bees are on the ice at TD Garden or on the road, you won't miss a play. Bruins Hockey, presented by Southern Mass Credit Union, the Mattapoisett Terror House, Castello Real Estate, Fall River Ford, and by the Oaks Nursing Center. Your home for the Boston Bruins is right here on AM 1420 WBSM.
This is Jack Peterson with the latest featured animals up for adoption at the Forever Paws Animal Shelter at 300 Linwood Street in Fall River. Aslan and Precious are 2 canine buddies up for adoption. Aslan is a 2-year-old tiger striped brindle American Stratfordshire Terrier who'd make a great companion. He's gentle, friendly, playful, and loves the comfort of a cozy couch. Precious is a black and white 3-year-old large hound mix that's been at the shelter for a year. She's an awesome dog who's still waiting for that special person to take her home. She's friendly, playful, has lots of energy, and full of personality. Aslan and Precious can be seen daily in a play yard together at the Forever Paws shelter, enjoying a tug-of-war game with their favorite toys. They both get along well with other animals and would be a wonderful addition to any family. Visit them at the shelter. For more information, call the shelter at 508-677-9154 or visit their website, foreverpaws.com. Both pictures can be viewed on this site.
Confusion ever someone or have sudden you trouble had speaking, understanding?
Understanding trouble? Have you sudden have or speaking someone ever confusion?
Have you ever had sudden confusion, trouble speaking, or understanding someone?
It could be one of the 5 signs of stroke.
Sudden weakness or numbness of the face, arm, or leg.
Sudden trouble with vision in one or both eyes.
Suddenly having trouble walking or difficulty with balance.
Or a sudden intense headache that comes out of nowhere.
If you or someone you know has any of these symptoms, don't wait. Call 911 immediately. You could make a difference in someone's life, someone you love, maybe even your own.
It's late until, wait, don't
wait until it's too late. Time lost is brain lost.
Find out more at powertoendstroke.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
Before your next medical appointment, write down any questions you have, with the most important ones first, and make a list of every medication you take, even over-the-counter medicines and vitamins, and bring it with you. Make sure you ask your questions and really understand what the doctor or nurse is telling you before you leave, and be sure to ask if you don't understand something. Visit ahrq.gov/questions and check out the tips and tools section for a free guide with more information. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Turn on all your lights, lock the doors, and pull down the shades. Spooky South Coast is back.
All right, welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz, and on the line with us is content director Chris Balzano. And we were just talking about, as we were coming back on the air, how, I had never flown on a plane before, and I just did, my first flight had to be cross country, nonstop in a plane, but it was a great time. Jeff, of course, held my hand through the whole thing and helped me through it, showed me how to navigate through an airport and all that kind of stuff, but I did it. I finally did it. So now that I've flown and now that I've traveled, people, if you want to hire me to come to some of these conventions and stuff, I'm not afraid anymore. I did tell the woman next to me on the flight out, I was like, can you hold my hand? She was like, get off me, creep. No, she was very nice. She helped out quite a bit. Chris, now that I can get on a plane, maybe I should come down and visit you.
Oh, I would love this. This is great. Yeah, it really freaks me out. I haven't gone over flying. I fly only because I absolutely have to. I have no enjoyment in it whatsoever. I've really only flown to and from Florida, so it's always been a labor of love. Either going to see my wife, my soon-to-be wife, or coming back to see my friends in Massachusetts and New England. So I do not like it, and I think it's unnatural. I think it's completely hubris.
It really is, and I was realizing as I was landing for the first time that that's not a pleasant feeling. And then on the way back, Jeff had an empty water bottle, and he's like, "Hey, watch this." And so we just watched the bottle completely decompress under the pressure. And I'm just thinking, that's what my eardrums are doing right now. That's what the internal organs of my body are doing right now. Maybe this is not a natural thing, but whatever.
I think rather than discussing whether the paranormal has a negative effect, we should discuss whether just the Belanger has a negative effect in your life.
He can talk somebody into anything. He does. And you know what? I think I mentioned this to you off the air, Chris, but I didn't want to do it, but I found myself doing it. I was consciously trying to avoid doing it, but I was just like, yep, I'll have what he's having. Yep, all right, whatever he's going to do. Yep, no, that's fine. I'll have the same thing.
That's very cute.
Yeah, I know. All right. So you guys can pick on me for that all you want. But I do want to get into this topic of, we were going to talk about this a little bit last week, but we didn't get the chance. The idea that there are some people who do suffer that stigma from the paranormal. I'm going to read this story that Chris put up on ghostvillage.com, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. The idea of allowing paranormal investigators to speak in the North Platte Public Schools elicited an outcry from some members of the community. As a result, I'm sorry, did I start that story in the middle, Chris?
Yeah, somewhat, but it's fine. You didn't lose anything.
All right. Sorry, I got a whole bunch of papers here in front of me tonight. I don't know why I'm not so prepared.
I can summarize it if you like.
Yeah, why don't you summarize? That'd probably be better.
Sure. This group, Trips Paranormal, from North Platte, Nebraska, they were going to present a, this is kind of like a little fun day. It was sponsored by this club. And they wanted these guys to come in, and they were going to come in, and it was almost like a career day kind of thing, and they were using the paranormal and their own success in kind of the local community, maybe even their local celebrity in the community, to tell the story of success, and of, if you believe it, no matter what people think, go and strive and do your best, and and you can, be brave too, and you can find your own little personal successes. And the newspaper, I believe it was the Telegraph or the Telegram, posted the story because it was a very, interest one. People locals are going to hear from successful, people, and the school itself got such a response because, well, for various reasons, but the general tone of it was, we can't talk about this kind of thing in school. And and that was twofold. That was, first of all, these are not appropriate conversations to have in school because ghosts and monsters and demons and all this stuff, that people can't make the distinction between those things. And the second reason was it fell under religious grounds. And so if you can't talk about religion and you can't bring up religious issues in schools, then you can't bring on paranormal investigators. So obviously, once again, there's no separation between spirituality and paranormal investigating. So even though their focus wasn't really to talk about ghosts and what is a ghost and here's what we do with ghosts, it was more of using that as a means to connect to the kids, to get them to be inspired to go do good things.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused such an uproar that the visit was canceled, that the presentation was canceled.
But, I mean, first off, the first thing that comes to my mind is, does it really not belong in schools because of the religious aspect? I mean, I don't see ghosts as necessarily being a religious point of view. I mean, how many times do we talk about it where we're able to skirt the idea of religion?
Yeah, no, it's a religious issue. It's for the majority of Americans, it's a religious issue. They don't see a separation between that, and I can tell you that from living in, the South now. I can tell you that from the news articles that I see. That the majority of people, keep in mind that regardless of the ratings that the paranormal shows get, looking for ghosts is not considered a normal thing for people to do, even though they watch the shows. There's not a direct correlation between those two things. And the second thing is that the majority of people aren't. If they did, they'd be pulling in 100% of the ratings every day, every week. They're not. So it's really a small vocal and shopping, so they're spending money, so they're getting sponsors, community that are doing this, but it's not reflective of the U.S. as a whole.
Yeah. Well, and also we do know that no matter how big that audience might be, the fundamental control will always be in the hands to some degree of the religious right because they're the ones that make the most noise. So people are afraid to cross them anyway because they're the ones that are going to make your life a living hell if you do.
Right, because, if you are a religious person, and there's a negative connotation to that, which is somewhat unfortunate, but if you're a religious person, it's on the forefront of things that you do. And so things that look to offend that or look to confront that are dangerous to your way of life. And it's whereas it's frustrating, it's also completely understandable. The unfortunate thing is that we as paranormal investigators don't get enough of a microphone to make that separation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to most paranormal investigators, they can claim their spirituality and they can talk about their emotions of it, but it's an issue that they can't avoid because if you're dealing with the public thinks a certain way, and so therefore you have to respect that going forward. And the unfortunate thing that's happened is that then that clashes with you're clashing with a person's most passionate thing, and the paranormal investigators tend to have that be the most passionate thing in their lives, and so there really is no kind of common ground to make legitimate points.
The problem with it is, though, is they lost the appeal that these kids might have suddenly found for history, for science. What could have been a positive motivational tool for them to want to study these disciplines, they now miss out on because of the misconstrued nature of what the presentation would have been before it was even allowed to be given.
Right. I mean, I wish I could give everyone a class, every paranormal investigator looking to do something like this, or every teacher, which I do give teachers this class, is how to do things like this in the classroom and do it in such a way that you pretty much are keeping yourself in a safe area. So my kids don't realize that they don't realize that in me giving them the paranormal things, I'm doing just enough to make it literary and covering my own self, if you will, that if any parent were to complain, then they really wouldn't be able to have any grounds. Because when the kids ask questions about specific things, I tell them, well, I really can't talk about that kind of thing. And that message hits them, but what hits them more are the other things that I'm saying. And so if you ask them if I said that, they don't remember that part. So when they go back and tell their parents, and parents from clinic always say, actually, we didn't talk about ghosts once. We didn't talk about what a ghost was at all. We talked about the story that involved the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's pretty much how I've been able to, one of the ways that I've been able to kind of skirt around this issue. But it is an issue for other people.
And that's something that I want to delve a little bit more into, is how it does become an issue. And, of course, you've got the probably the most under the microscope, no pun to Moniz's job, being a scientist. But you probably got the job that is the most under the microscope when it comes to talking about this stuff, because you are in a position of influence over young minds, and you're probably butting heads with parents enough just about curriculum and just enough about behavior in the classroom and child's study habits and whether or not they're getting their work done and things like that. You've got enough constant friction happening anyway, and how must it be then to also throw the ghost stuff into there as well?
Well, I had a really difficult student last year who was very religious, who also had a lot of issues with me, just as me being her teacher. And I learned a lot, not in terms of how to manipulate the system, but more in terms of when you're approaching it, to be aware of the fact that people don't have your same belief system. And so if you can approach it with more respect and recognition, then I'm going to try to prove anything, or no, it's not, absolutely not, has nothing to do with God. You're going to find yourself on a much more even keel, because you're not getting over the top with it. And really, when you talk to them, you can say, you know what, I understand that, and for that class, I won't do that. Or, you know what, I understand that, what we're going to do? We're going to change that around a little bit, just to them. And most parents, when you all of a sudden kind of create a situation where their kid is special in some way, without kind of calling them out in front of the class, they like that. But it is one of those things where, and I think that extends to paranormal investigating of all kinds, that extends to talking about this, about creating platforms for this, is that you have to understand, not necessarily incorporate into your belief system, but understand and respect the fact that other people do have different ideas. And your job is to maybe present your side as opposed to state your side. And that's a small that's a small little difference. It's all in the semantics and the wordings of it, but it really is one of those things where, for people who hail themselves as being open-minded, you also have to be open-minded when you're confronting things that, are not, are causing you tension like that, because, there's no one wins in that battle, because they have the power, they have the voice, and ultimately, it's one of those things where if I went in and I talked about, another issue that had a religious aspect to it, even if I wasn't religious in my presentation of it, there you go. I could be attached to the same thing. So you really have to kind of keep that in mind, that open-mindedness and that, respect, most importantly.
Well, and you are, again, being a teacher, you're also in that position where, you have to be careful of pretty much everything you say anyway, because in some degree, in some ways, you kind of want to be, cool Mr. Balzano, and you want to be the guy that everybody likes and gets along with, and sometimes, that looseness is misconstrued by people, or you could be kind of the guy who wants to be strict and, kind of toe the line about things and say, hey, listen, we're not, ghosts are what I do outside the classroom. We can't talk about it in here. That's my outside pursuits, and I don't think it's appropriate for the classroom. And then it looks like, you're being a hard ass when you're just trying to keep those lines firmly in place. I mean, it's like, a history teacher who is teaching about the Holocaust and is just afraid to crack a joke, because then, the kids are going to go home and tell the parents that he's a Nazi.
Right. I mean, and you have to be, whereas all these levels of, and that's not an example of this, but all the levels of PC and all the levels of filters you have to create, seems like it's a real pain in the butt. But it really, I think, does, if you really follow and you pay attention to the filters that people are asking you to do, you don't necessarily earn a love or a full understanding of their perspective, but it helps you become a more well-rounded person, because you realize that, especially, I think paranormal people are very much in this, little bubble that kind of, they think, oh, the world thinks this, or they think that the world are watching these things. The majority of people, if you ask them, who Grant is, then they don't know that answer. They don't really know who that is. I don't know that guy's last name. What is his last name? Grant. Jason and Grant. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm gonna say.
Sorry, I'm just having a good on my mind.
No, I'm just trying to make sure that you're not trying to jump into the next section that we're saving for later on. Letting that cat.
No. I feel like the majority of people don't do that, and so and like we began this kind of conversation with ideas from different parts of the world are much more open to the existence of ghosts, and so therefore the connection between ghosts and crime is much tighter, or at least more out there. We also have to keep in mind that those people are now here. So we are built on many of those same religious systems, and some of those religious systems are still influencing and even recently influencing cultures that we have today. So if you take something like voodoo, whereas 20 years ago might have been able to come in and make jokes about that, well now voodoo is connected to cultures, and you now have kids that are of that culture in your classroom where you might not have 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Therefore, it doesn't. You have to understand that you're attacking something as kind of spooky or creepy, but this is a genuine belief system that someone in your class might have.
Well, let's take a step outside of the classroom and being afraid of the religious aspect of things, and let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's the world of science. And I was talking with Matt Moniz about this earlier today, and I said, you must have met a lot of resistance from coworkers who found out that you're involved in the paranormal. A lot of them started kind of questioning what you were doing and why you were wasting your time, under that pursuit. But you actually told me that you've had some startling conversations with some of them.
Well, it's funny because when they first find out, you get the typical snickers, and you get the barbs and things thrown at you all the time. Oh, there's nothing to that. Why are you wasting your time? This and that and this and that. That's while they're in front of all of their other peers and things like that. The minute that you're alone with them and the topic comes up, they want to know anything and everything you can tell them. They're all bravado, in front of each other. But almost every single person that's, riled me for doing it has come to me in a secretive manner and wanted to see what I have. And they wanted to know, can they, occasionally come out with me and things like that. But the minute, somebody else walks back in, or, the topic comes back up, it's the same old thing. And what's even more funny is, like, the people that I would think wouldn't be interested in it seriously is, like, when on the odd occasions when I've been on television, hey, I saw you on TV last night. Oh, so you watch those shows, and then then they realize
yeah. My wife was watching it. Yeah.
But and what's interesting about that, though, is that there is still that need to ridicule you for it, and
well, I keep giving them the same line back. Okay, you say there's nothing to it. I want you to go look in all of the periodicals, look up in all of the books. Show me where it has been conclusively proved. Show me an unbiased, unprejudiced study that is completely open.
Not by James Randi.
Like I said, an open and objective study that has been done that shows that there's nothing to it. There hasn't been.
But
I would think that a scientist, like talking to a scientist, their mind would be so open to possibilities.
That's what they're supposed to be, but
and with rigid things that back it up. But like they're the ones that discover the stuff that we can't discover yet, and yet they would scoff at something that is starting to even more reveal itself as potential.
Okay, now this is what I've noticed. It has less to do with what you're being taught in school in terms of science. It has more to do with what you're being taught as a kid and in your social structure from outside of science. If you understand what I'm saying.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's the social stigma attached outside of it. Objectively, as a scientist, you're not supposed to be making a decision one way or another until you actually look and, conduct something. You don't just take a word of somebody, or, just leave it out of a hat until it's been shown. People have actually looked and done and shown. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of the negative that comes out of it is from the social aspect outside of science. If that makes any sense to everybody else, I'm sure.
I was going to ask you, like, you say that you kind of get teased and ridiculed a little bit from your coworkers, but in a scientific laboratory environment, I mean, how much razzing is there going on amongst each other anyway? Like, if it wasn't, about ghosts, if they were razzing you because you're a Green Bay Packers fan, how much of that stuff
you can get that in any type of work environment.
Sure.
People, have their sports affiliates, or they're a proponent of this or that. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm asking. Are they picking on you because they firmly are against that, or is that just what it's going to be? You're the ghost guy. You're the ghost guy, and that guy over there is the brown tie with a brown shirt guy.
I think what he's saying is that they want to make fun of you, and they really can't do it any other way except for this way.
Right.
Because the other stuff would be just too painful.
In a certain sense, yeah. No, you're right.
Well, I mean, I don't.
Sorry, I jumped on your question.
No, but I know. I'm trying to say this here in a way that's not. I don't want it to sound like I'm being mean to Monies and picking on them.
Go ahead. How's that going to be different from other shows?
You're an outside the box kind of guy, though.
Really?
You are not conforming to how other people are anyway. You're an individual, and you have no problem being that individual.
That's how I was made.
So, what I'm saying is, like, if you came to me, if I was a scientist and I was working in whatever, laboratory, whatever it is that I do, I wouldn't even pretend to know what job I'd be doing in a lab, but, I'm doing my job in a laboratory.
I'm pretty sure you're qualified to wash beakers.
And you're a coworker, and I see, and I'm like, oh, here comes this long-haired biker guy, I know, from talking to him that he's, he loves to ride bikes, he's an outdoorsman, he likes to do all that kind of stuff. It's almost like when I know all this stuff about you, and then you come out and say, oh, and I also look for the paranormal in my spare time. To me, I'd be like, that just kind of fits your personality. You're an adventurous guy. You're looking for things that are different. You're looking for things that are exciting. That wouldn't surprise me. So that's why I think that the stigma that's there isn't about the person that's going out there and doing it. It's about the fact that it's even a pursuit. It's the subject matter, and it's not the people that do it. I think there are some cases beyond in the school environment, in a lab environment, where it's actually reflecting negatively on the people themselves. And it's more about a judgment call on the person for what they do. And I'm sure some of our listeners out there have had those experiences. If they want to kind of call in and share them, we would love to hear them. 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. Is that something that you've ever experienced, Moniz, where somebody made a judgment about your personality in a negative way because you went out and pursued this stuff?
I get judgments of my personality just on my appearance alone. But like you said, I am an individual. I make no excuses for, how I look and the way I act. I am who I am. And I was like
and
that.
I applaud you for that. I don't want to make it sound like I'm picking on you.
No, but I've always been that type of individual. I've always been that unique person that's gone out. Now, don't take this the wrong way, folks. A lot of people are sheep. They'll just follow along with the rest of the crowd. I found at an early age, I had my own brain, and I wanted to look. No, don't do this, I got myself into a lot of trouble. I was like, okay, some things, you really don't want to do. Other things, okay, why is this? I've always had that inquisitive thing. Why? Why can't I do this? Why can't I, dress like this? Why can't I have this type of hairstyle? Why can't I, do this or that? Oh, well, that's not what society wants. Well, I don't care about society. I'm an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's shifted too, because I remember, when I first started my site, I remember my friend saying to me, they should do a story about you. Well, why should they do a story about me? This guy, I'm an amazing guy. And she said, because people who do this don't look like you. And I said,
what do they look like?
Well, right. So I'm like, what are you talking about? Keep in mind, this is like 2005. Like, what do they look like? And she said, well, they don't like the Patriots. They don't watch baseball and stuff. They're not into good music. They don't look normal like you look. first question was that, how do I look normal? But the second one was like, well, what do you think about people who do this kind of thing? And I want you to keep in mind that she was doing much of this with me, and she's like, I don't know, they're just weirdos, and you're not a weirdo when you do this. And so I think that weirdo factor has shifted, but I think there's some of that still kind of old school mentality that kind of filters in. Like, people expect to some degree that, we've got a very Van Helsing look to us, or we're the kind of people who spent our youth in dark rooms and weird things that other people liked, but didn't like as much of us as we did. And so I think that's shifted, but I think it hasn't shifted completely to realizing that people from all walks of life, look completely different, all types of educational backgrounds, or at least have these ideas. And then I think that old way of looking at people who are into ghosts. So it's never you do this. It's always, oh, you're into this. And so I think that people still view it like that, regardless of whether we're we look like all other paranormal investigators, or we look like our own selves, or we look like the guy down the street who you wouldn't expect to think of it.
Well, here's a situation that I'm kind of in right now. Not that I want to talk about this much on the air, but I'm in the process of looking for a new career, we'll say. And on my resume, I have all the different things that I've done, both in the sports world and in the paranormal world. I've been fortunate enough to make some television appearances, and I've had my writings featured. I've written a couple of books. So these things are on my resume. And the question that I was discussing with my wife just a few days ago was, is that a bad thing? Should that stuff be on there? Because am I not being called in for interviews because they see on there that I'm involved in these pursuits? I can tell you in the couple of interviews that I've gone on, it comes up. It comes up in discussion.
Right. And I think that you suffer from the same thing I did when I moved down here, which is if Moniz wants to go for a job interview, it's not relevant to his experience as a scientist necessarily, although we would all say it is.
Yes.
I have been asked about it.
He would talk about what labs he works at. He would talk about, whereas you and I are necessarily going for things that our appeal would be, if I had written for this TV show, or appeared on this TV show, or written this book about this, or it would be much more appealing. But as soon as it's the ghost thing, it then becomes a question of whether you include it.
Exactly.
Well,
you can't even get them to read your writing sample because they're like, well, if it's about ghosts, I don't want to read it.
It can't. I just got a job in a new laboratory. It's actually across from MIT.
Congrats, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And the subject actually did come up during the interview, and the people interviewing me actually found it fascinating. And I was like, "Don't worry, it won't interfere with my work and stuff like that." It's like, no. Can you give me websites so I can go look some of this stuff up?
Sure,
And had you actually put it in your resume, Matt?
No.
So they did like a little background thingy on you, and
no, they asked about.
Found you and I talking about Bostonese on YouTube.
No, it actually came up asking about the things I do for hobbies. It's just well, what do you do on this? Well, I do a radio show, I do TV show and things like that. Oh, what on? And I had to grin and just, I do it on this. Oh, really? Because apparently, like I said, a lot of scientists are closet investigators, armchair closet investigators. They won't let other people know they're looking into and doing it. They applauded me for being open about it. It's stuff that they would like to be able to do, because in science, you learn by looking at what you don't know, not what you already know. That's how science is advanced, and we don't know that much about this yet. So it's one of the last frontiers that still can be made headways in.
Mm-hmm.
You can do stuff, but unfortunately, the stigma is still attached. And like I said, that stigma isn't so much attached so much from science. Part of the problem was the Age of Enlightenment was an attempt to wrestle people's minds from the church and its hold on people through superstitions. Okay, what it was trying to do is eliminate superstitions, but things like ghosts and ETs were the 800-pound gorillas in the room that science just, put it in the corner and says, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, but all this other stuff is all.
I also think, too, though, I think to some degree the science burying the paranormal is part of the handshake agreement between religion and science to coexist. From all those years when they didn't coexist.
It's the common ground that both of them are afraid of.
Pretty much, because, the religious aspect of it, too, is that they have just as much to lose by proving that the paranormal is correct. The paranormal is real, too. So it's that backdoor agreement between the two of them to, I won't let them come out and say it if you don't let them come out and say it. And we can,
you got it.
We can wash each other's backs on this. But I'll tell you this much. I did go on one interview where the woman was an over-the-moon paranormal fan. And I didn't necessarily need to bring it up because she had seen me on Ghost Adventures. And so when she saw me, she recognized me from it, and we started talking and everything, and she's like, so what's Zach like? Can you make it so I can meet him? I was like, lady, if you hire me for this job, I'll find a way. But I mean, that is the other aspect of it, too, is enough people are starting to pay attention to this that it may not carry a stigma when you go into an interview, and it just might be another no different than a guy who's 45 years old and still plays in a semi-pro football league on the weekends. Oh, that's different. It's just something that makes you a more well-rounded person. Maybe, I hope. I'd like to think this is why this isn't why I'm not getting calls, but maybe that's the case. Well, why don't you call it and let us know? 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. And I put this up on Facebook and I put it up on Twitter, this question about, have you been ostracized at all for your interest in the paranormal? And some people were getting back to me with some actual input of, it's not so much that we've been ostracized in our regular lives, it's how much we've been ostracized within the field itself. How much that it's been because you have your certain set of beliefs within the paranormal that you can't always get along with other people that have a different set of beliefs. And that's a real shame, because it's like, I don't want to get crazy here in my comparisons to this, but it would literally be like, an immigrant population coming into a city, and the immigrant population is fighting with each other about which one of them is more persecuted.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, you kind of want to just Rodney King it and say, can't we all get along, because we're all kind of fighting against the same problem here, and I don't know.
Well, that's the issue that we have to deal with in science. That's why it's not really accepted, because there's no standardized methodology. And that's what science works on, is a standard form that everybody can take and do and replicate. And unfortunately, in the paranormal research community, nobody can agree on what should be done in which way. And until it's done, it's not going to get accepted. Pure, plain, simple. That's, unfortunately, that's the way it is. You're going to have the purist in the science end of things saying, we have to do measurements of this, that, this, and this way and that. And then you'll have the people that are of the more religious, spiritual nature. No, we have to do this and that and this and that with, and you can't get the two to meet. One won't accept the other. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I'm not sure I want it standardized. I'm not sure I want a I'm thinking of the line from that great movie Almost Famous when he says, should we need to be responsible here? Like I said, wait a minute, didn't we start doing a band because we didn't want to be responsible? I'm not saying we don't need to be responsible, but I don't want someone telling me my vision needs to be limited by certain criteria or anything that I have that falls outside that criteria once again. I mean, that to me doesn't seem like it's conducive to those who are the same original thinkers who wanted to do this in the first place.
No, I understand, but I'm saying...
and there goes the battle, that's why it never will, and I'm not sure we should even struggle to make it. I think it should be an internal kind of thing rather than a let's prove things to the public.
Well, do a lot of these scientists who think that it needs to be standardized and provable in that fashion, do they still think that the Earth is the center of the universe and the sun revolves around this planet? Do they still think that?
That's not.
Is that not right?
That's more the old religious and scientific.
No, scientifically though they believe that scientifically. They scientifically believe the Earth was the pole of the universe, and that everything revolved around this planet. And then, over the years they make these other discoveries. It happens. It's not
Oh,
necessarily.
you're talking. Okay, I thought you were talking currently. It's like
No, not currently. No, I know there are some people that still believe that now.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, these advances are made because our idea of what logic is changes. It adapts. And right now, more than anything, we're stuck in a huge lockdown of what logic is. Now, thankfully, quantum physics has been able to kind of open the door a little bit in the minds of certain people, but we are kind of in a logic lockdown right now of, if it doesn't follow the rules of physics, it can't be.
Well, that's the problem that I'm talking about. When you're doing these type of scientific testing, you have to use the accepted parts of science that already are established. You can't use what is considered another pseudoscience to validate another pseudoscience. In other words, you can't use psychics to validate ghosts in the terms of science, because you're using a pseudoscience to validate another pseudoscience in their opinion.
Right, like people who say that it's not a ghost moving the Ouija board, it's your mind. It's, well, wait a minute, so now I have the ability to move things with my mind? Rock on!
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go be a superhero now.
Right, who cares about ghosts if I can move things with my mind?
Yeah, I've been trying to do it for years. Usually it's when I'm sitting at one end of the couch and the remote's at the other. And then it's like, it doesn't matter to me. It could either be the remote flying into my hand or me changing the channel mentally. Either one works for me. Well, I mean, neither one works for me, but either one would work for me. One of the problems that I have with the whole idea, of science proving the paranormal, is I'm starting to wonder more and more. And Moniz and I talked about this after the show last week. It's not going to be proven by science. If it hasn't been by now, by these methods of what they're looking for.
There's enough collective evidence to say that there definitely should warrant further actual academic research in this.
But you have to make some concessions in that academic research. You can't,
such as?
Well, for one thing, you can't say, it has to happen in the laboratory.
No. The laboratory is where you're going. I mean, everybody tries to pull that same old, especially non-scientists. Not everything can be done in a laboratory. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you can't study a blue whale in a laboratory unless your laboratory is, out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah.
For a marine biologist, that is their laboratory.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's exactly the same point that we've made before when we've talked about this off the air, is, if in certain sciences they're willing to go out into the field to study this, why does this seem to be the one thing that they won't go out into the field to study? In theory, and we know that this isn't true, but because it's just not, they're not scientists, but in theory, the idea of these paranormal investigation TV shows and paranormal investigation groups is that they are bringing the science out into the field. Now you can say all you want about whether or not they're actually following scientific procedures, but if you could get a team of 5 of the scientists in your laboratory to go with us to Lizzie Borden's, and everybody puts their heads together, you can't tell me that they couldn't come up with some pretty good ways of testing what's going on there using that as a laboratory.
You actually, that's the whole thing. A laboratory is just a means of controlling the conditions.
Yes.
You can control the conditions elsewhere. It doesn't have to be a specific building with this particular type of ventilation systems and hoods and chemical cabinets. It has to be the conditions are controlled where you're conducting the experiment.
And the other problem with that, though, is that the experiment has to be repeatable. And unfortunately, it's not always repeatable. It's not repeatable for us when we go in there and just want to get some sort of... Well, and repeatable...
Same thing with the blue whale. The blue whale isn't just going to keep appearing in the same bay every time. You have to follow it. And it's a biological animal. It does what it wants to do. So,
and I think the whale is a good example of one of the other issues, which is when a scientist goes out to study that whale, he's not trying to prove the existence of the whale. He's trying to observe the whale to learn more about what makes the whale the whale.
Got it.
And we are forcing, no, prove it's real, as opposed to coding from a mindset. And I think investigators are guilty of this too. Rather than trying to prove that something is there, not prove that it's there, why don't you just go and observe and take your scientific method and filter it into observation as opposed to, the creating of the synthesis of proof or not proof. You know, and I think that would be a much more effective way to investigate, and it would be an interesting way for scientists to approach it as well.
Well, that's what I was referring to. I'm not saying you go out with all of these meters and it has to raise it. No. First, you're observing the environment, what happens, okay? Then you bring in all of the equipment to measure things when those things happen again. And then you try and repeat that or have somebody else repeat it in the same thing. People get confused saying, you're going to prove it by going in with this equipment, this and no. The equipment is just there as data to verify that this observation happens, and these are the transient effects that happen on things that record data. No if, no and, no but. This is what they do.
So if the paranormal activity is your variable, then what would be your constant?
Your constant is you. You're the observer. You're the constant. You're also having the, let's call it the unbiased of your equipment. The equipment is unbiased. It doesn't suffer from hallucinations, doesn't have preconceived notions. It's just an autonomic device that brings in data and spits it back out. Okay? That makes sense?
It does, but I think part of the problem with that is by using yourself as the constant, it makes it subjective still instead of objective.
For observation?
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to have that debate of, did I influence it by being there? You're still going to have
the Heisenberg effect.
Yeah, and you're still going to have that, that out for people to say, well, sure, ghosts do exist, but they're caused by people's minds.
Okay, then that's still worth documenting.
Yeah, I know.
It's a win-win situation either way.
It may be for you, but for some of these people, it's not the answer that they're looking for.
I thought Desmond was the constant.
He was.
Okay, sorry.
Moniz won't know about that, but he was.
All right, okay.
So if we're looking, it's a lost reference.
Okay.
And literally a lost reference. But I think that it's very interesting that, here we are early in this year in 2012, and two of our shows already right off the top of the bat here at the beginning of our 7th season, is that we're delving into these topics and what this means. And I think it means that people are getting to the point where they want to explore more the deeper meaning of it and more the deeper ramifications of it. Now that we've seen the popularity of it with what we talked about last week with Deanna Saeed and about the popularity of these paranormal reality TV shows, now we're going to start to see the effect of it. Now it's starting to be out there enough that we're going to start to see what happens when you are willing to be more accepting of the paranormal as a culture. 45% of Americans believe in the existence of ghosts. Now we're going to see what happens when that's the case, because we're seeing the effects of people being stigmatized for their beliefs in it. We're seeing people blaming ghosts for crimes. We're seeing, that issue popping up when you can't imagine that 20 years ago there would have even been a paranormal group that would have wanted to go and speak in a school environment. And now they have to be told, in this manner, in the manner of this group.
Oh, I did it 20 years ago.
I know that you did it, but you did it to college-age kids.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about going into a high school and doing it as an after-school program. Sorry, Chris.
Two things are important to know. One is that there were at least half a dozen to a dozen stories over the summer about individual towns whose summer reading program revolves around the paranormal. So we'll take that, so that's it. That part is good, because people are starting to come around because this is a way to engage kids. The opposite spectrum of that is having seen, just about every news report that comes across the wire that might involve ghosts, that there is very rarely a time that ghosts aren't used in a negative light. But whether they're the crime things that we're talking about now, or whether it's
a scary thing, or
whether it's, and I actually, those people who got the Ghost Village newsletter, I wrote a little thing about this, about how, news is constantly making reference to being, haunted by the ghosts of the past. You're never like walking hand in hand through fields with the ghosts of the past. It's always being haunted by the ghosts of the past, or you have to exorcise the ghosts. People not realizing, exorcism of ghosts is kind of a, an odd term. But it's very rare that you get the news report, and it's always buried in a local paper in the style section. Not even the neutral ones of here's the group that does it, because people kind of read that and they just will go on their way. But ones of like the good works that people do, like cleaning up cemeteries or giving to charity or Last year there was several of the shows that allowed people to investigate who were like from Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Mhm.
Those stories are very few and far between. So instead, people are inundated in the news with negatives and with a very negative connotation to anything that's related to ghosts. So that's 45% who says they believe in ghosts aren't necessarily going to be given the most positive view of ghosts.
Sure.
It doesn't say 45% of people like ghosts.
Yeah, that's
45% of people believe in them, and that is that's a tricky. We talked about that before. That's a tricky stat that they throw out.
Speaking of believing in ghosts, we have about 5 minutes here before the end of the show. I do want to talk about one big topic that's coming up in the paranormal world this week. We saw that teaser for anybody that watched Ghost Adventures last week. You saw that little teaser at the end with you've got Steve Gonzalez crying. And
Ghost Hunters.
Ghost Hunters. I'm sorry. That just shows you how much I pay attention. But, so we see this clip. I've seen it now online where you see Steve Gonzalez crying and, Amy Bruni hugging people and, everybody's upset. And because there's some big news, it's going to change the face of Ghost Hunters and change the face of TAPS forever. And the speculation, of course, all over the internet is that Grant Wilson is stepping down from the show. There's a variety of different speculations as to why. Health issues, marriage issues. Everybody's got their opinion of what it could be. I don't want to talk about any of that because, again, it's all speculation. And if we even start to do that, people are going to be like, well, you know them, so you must know what's really going on. And I don't want to have that happen. I do just want to look at it like this. We'll go around real quick. Matt Moniz, what do you think happens to Ghost Hunters if Grant Wilson isn't involved?
I think it will still continue. It's a cash cow that Sci-Fi and Pilgrim Entertainment has been riding for the past 7 years. They're not about to let that stop.
Chris, what do you think? Do you think that the loss of one of these core, the quote-unquote founding fathers of the new paranormal movement, do you think that one of them stepping away from camera will make a difference?
How was Happy Days after Richie left? It went on for like 5 more years after that, but
it just wasn't as good. Yeah.
Right.
And I think Dave said it best when what was the quote that Dave had in the chat room?
Something about jumping the shark.
Yeah, he made a reference about how Jason was going to strap on some water skis and jump over a shark.
Oh, wow. Okay, so obviously Dave and I are the same mindset tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I do think that there's room on these paranormal programs for different characters, because that's what they are when they're on the shows, for different characters to emerge, and I think that the change up is good, and I think that if it is that Grant Wilson stepping down and he has a good reason for doing it, well then good. I'm glad that he's not going to hang on to it and just kind of ride it out.
I would be interested. I'm sorry to cut you off. I would be interested to know whether people who watch Ghost Hunters watch it for those characters. I mean, I know I've talked to Jeff about this before, how people who watch Ghost Adventures, for example, love the people specifically who are on Ghost Adventures.
They do, and it's amazing. They do.
And so I wonder if even after, because from what I hear when I see the show or when people talk about it, they have a pretty big cast of characters who are doing things, and of course they all revolve around these main kind of mainstays that are there. But I wonder if people who watch Ghost Hunters watch it for those specific characters, or whether it's kind of become more of a content as opposed to character.
Well, when I watched it, and I'm talking in the beginning years, when I watched it, I always watched it for the evidence and for the investigation. And I could care less about who the investigators were that were there. But I think that part of what's happened is people have become accustomed to a lot of that evidence, and they've become kind of used to what happens, so for them it is about the characters. And because it's one of those shows where you feel like you know the guys, that the loss of one person could make a difference. Do I think it's going to hurt ratings? Nope, not at all. But will the dynamic change? Probably. It's the same thing as if you were no longer involved with Spooky Southcoast, Chris. Even though you're not always in front of the cameras or behind the microphone, the fact that you are the lifeblood that runs through this program, we would have probably quit 2 years ago, but you won't let us.
Well, I remember when they killed off Valerie on Valerie's Family, and they made it, the Hogan family.
Sandy Duncan, way better.
And the problem is, and of course, there's a fine line I think that they can't dance on this, is that can they come up with shows that are about, what it's like now that he's not there? Which a scripted, quote-unquote scripted show can do, but would they be able to pull that off? Because that is an emotional thing that to have those characters go through on the show, but I'm not sure if you can do it with a reality-based show.
Well, I'll say this.
That's not focused on, people loving each other.
I picture it as this. This is the mid-season finale coming up, is what they're calling it. I think Grant's going to leave. He's going to go away. And then in the season finale, he's going to be, we're going to see Jason taking a shower. And then when he opens up the shower door, Grant will be outside.
I was going to say, let's not forget, Richie did come back.
Well, I was giving it the Dallas ending.
It had that heartfelt Blueberry Hill, singing thing.
Yeah, I was trying to give it the Dallas ending.
Oh!
I had to kind of explain that because otherwise it just sounded really creepy for two guys that spend a lot of time together in the dark. All right, that about does it for this week's show. While we have you on, Chris, you know who's on for next week?
We were going to do kind of an Amityville thing.
Oh, okay.
Remember that? And,
that's on me.
I've been trying to get Jackie to fulfill her part of it. We'll see what happens there, but
otherwise, we're going to have a great show no matter what. We'll be back here at 10-something next Saturday night, so you want to come back and enjoy that. Until then, just keep checking out SpookySouthcoast.com all week long. We promise we'll have some stuff up there. All the archives of all the videos have been moved over to YouTube. So much easier to watch, so check those out in case you missed any. Also, we're going to be updating the archives and getting everything all up to date as well, so I know a few people have been concerned about that. So just keep checking that out, and we'll take any comments, suggestions, spookycrew at SpookySouthcoast.com. Until next week, stay spooktacular.